I'm Steve Bujold, and this is Downhome Corner. Are you from the Maritimes and proud of your roots? Well, just like me, you're a Downhomer, and we are all connected. On this episode, we will be politically connected to Brent Babcock in Campbellton, New Brunswick. Brent worked on or around Parliament Hill for more than 15 years and has now accepted a position with the Restigouche River Experience Center and has moved back home. Brent will join us to talk about the new job and share a few stories about some of the world leaders and celebrities he met during those years on the Hill. And he's a very interesting story about how he spent one New Year's Day in Kandahar. Also joining us in Downhome Corner, Campbellton singer-songwriter Leslie Ferguson, who's written a beautiful, heartfelt song called Hero's Lullaby. It's a tribute to first-line responders. We'll discuss how the song came about, and we'll play it for you too. All that and more coming up. But first, always politically correct and a man guaranteed bipartisan support in the House, the Prime Minister of the Blues. Order of Canada recipient Norman Byron Mason. Yeah, we just call him Dutch.
Well, I've been all across this country, and I played so lonesome, honey. Yeah. You know, I'm trying to find you, baby. You know, something tells me that I will someday. Yeah. Trying to find you. Trying to find you. Trying to find my baby. Whoa, you think I ever will? I'm coming to get you. Look out. I'll find you the taste all year. You ain't getting away from me one more time, no. Yeah. Here I come. You're not leaving me again, I don't.
That's Downhomer and Halifax's Dutch Mason trying to find my baby. You're listening to Downhome Corner, and I'm your host, Steve Bujold. You know, I grew up in Campbellton, and when I went to junior high school, one of my best friends was David Berthelot. David and I loved to play street hockey after school, and for us, it was perfect since Dave lived on Howard Avenue, which literally began where the school grounds ended. Now, seconds after the final school bell rang, Dave and I had our sticks out and we were taking shots or trying to organize a short game of pickup hockey. Brent Babcock also lived on Howard Avenue and was as hockey crazed as Dave and I, so sometimes he would grab his stick and join in and maybe take shots with us behind Dave's house where we had set up a net. Now, I don't remember if we shared our dreams back in the day of what we wanted to do or be after we finished high school. But for Brent, it most certainly was not this. Guys, I'm going to study politics, and I'm going to move to Ottawa. I'll work for a former prime minister, become chief of staff for the Minister of Veterans Affairs. I'll work with the Prime Minister's office as well as the Premier's office in New Brunswick, and I'll be senior policy advisor for procurement to the Minister of National Defence. It won't be uncommon for me to pass by in the hallways members in the House of Commons who literally are on the news every night, including the Prime Minister. No, I don't think that Brent shared any of those dreams. I don't think he had those dreams back in the day, and if he did, he didn't share them with Dave and me. But, you know, after all that time, he actually did all those things. And he had a career on Parliament Hill that spanned more than 15 years. He met world leaders, celebrities, and newsmakers. And now he's moved back home, not to retire, but to accept a position with the Restigouche River Experience Center. Downhomers, you are going to love some of the stories we get to share with Brent. Well, Brent Babcock, welcome to Downhome Corner. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Now, what's your definition of a downhomer, Brent?
Well, downhomers are a unique breed. I think we're all kind of lonesome for home when we're not there. And when we get home, we sort of seem to all want to get back together and relive some of our old stories. So I always look at downhomers as a friendly place to reacquaint myself with where I grew up.
Nice definition. Well, Brent, from Campbellton, New Brunswick to the national stage of Canadian politics, how did you get there? What's your story?
Well, sometimes I used to ask myself, how did I possibly get here? But I had a lot of good fortune. I left here in '97 with Jean Dubé, who had been elected as a member of Parliament, and I soon got on the ground in Ottawa with him. And as things transpired, and I won't get into too much detail, but I'll take a quick run through. I volunteered and became an employee of the Right Honorable Joe Clark. And from there, it was a real launching pad. He was a really good mentor for me, helped me learn a little bit more about the operation or mechanics of government. Used to give me a lot of books to read or books to get out of the parliamentary library while I was waiting for him at meetings, that type of thing. So that got me into the legislative side of politics. And I had so many good people around me to, again, help me navigate and form my craft for speech writing and other things like that. And then finally, I found once the Prime Minister Harper won or came to government in 2006, I found my way into ministerial offices with the Defense Minister And from there, I got to see another aspect of governing and what it was like as a staffer in support of the efforts of a federal government. So that's basically how I got there in a few short lines.
Well, Brent, we'll get back to the Joe Clark job in a moment, too, and a few other things. But after 10 years in Parliament Hill, you moved back home and accepted a position with the Restigouche River Experience Centre. Now, tell us what the RREC is and what your role is.
Okay, well, I'm the current or the new director for the center. It's a concept that was developed almost 10 years ago by Al McNish, Tom Barity, Charlie Thomas, and I think there was one other individual that escapes me, John Van Horn. And those four individuals had a concept that they wanted to see a salmon-type museum constructed on the waterfront as part of a tourism and educational kind of center, given our relationship to the migration of Atlantic salmon through the Restigouche River. So that is basically the beginnings, and what it's morphed into. There was an opportunity to obtain some waterfront property here from the city. The city put together a package that would incorporate other tourism features, such as we have an 86-site RV park, not to be mistaken with a trailer park. This RV park is more upscale for the empty nesters and that type of thing. But the center itself is designed to offer visitors an experience on the Restigouche. So as we're launching or getting ourselves ramped up, we're going to be developing excursions out on the water and other types of experiences that you would find at fishing camps and that type of thing. So we're also here as a portal to support other tourism efforts beyond the Sugarloaf Park. So if we do have adventure tourism going on in the area, then we're also, I guess, a key partner in directing traffic their way. So that's really our role here.
Well, that's great, because I have always said that tourism is the true gem back home in many ways, So
Absolutely.
This could develop into other things that could help, the snowball effect, so to speak,
Sure. Sure. And if I could just add on to that, too, like we have an interpretation center here as well. So when you come in, it's a mini museum, and it focuses not just on salmon fishing, but the actual cultures from Listigouche to our Acadian and Scottish background or early beginnings here. And also we have a fine dining, I'd say a 4.5-star restaurant. We have a dedicated chef who is here. And that, surprisingly, even for myself coming back, has been tremendously successful, because there is no other place around here to find fine dining. So I didn't think there's that great an audience, but this restaurant is running at max capacity, and people are coming as far away as 2 hours to have dinner here. So another interesting part that maybe we hadn't realized or knew that was out there. So there's all kinds of new things coming out of this venture by the city, and we're very excited about where it can go, as this is going to be year 2 coming up this May.
It sounds like some optimistic thing is going on,
For sure.
Now, usually I ask downhomers in interviews, what, as a downhomer, you bring to the table in your career. But since you've kind of gone the other direction, you've moved back home, I'll reverse the question for you. What do you think, having worked on or around the biggest stage in Canadian politics, that you bring to the table back home now in your new position?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Stephen. I think the thing that I'm going to focus on is learning how to maneuver within government and how to access funding in different programs. I want to try and bring some of that back to the center here where I am, and for the community itself, in fact. There's ways that you can orchestrate an application for funding, and sometimes, if you're very creative, you can create your own funding that doesn't exist. And that's something I think I'm going to try and bring to this area in general, is that we have a story to tell here. We have an interesting story and a significant part of Canadian history. And I don't know if we've exploited it enough or used it in a way that could be more beneficial to the community. So I want to use the skills and see some of the experiences that I saw other members of Parliament and ministers use for their own ridings, primarily in Ontario and Nova Scotia. I want to see if we can't do a little bit of that here.
So funding could be a big part of it for you. That could be the big thing that you bring to the table, your skills in fundraising kind of thing.
Absolutely, and there's three facets to my job. I mean, there's the day-to-day operations of a tourism center. So you have staffing issues, you have customer service issues. The secondary part is of course for me to find programs and other types of experiences, develop those types of excursions for the people to take part in. And finally, the third part is to look outside the box and bring up see if we can fund some big ideas that maybe in the past we might have shied away from, thinking, well, we're too small to do something like that. So I mean, I have my dreamer's dream of things I'd like to see here, but I mean, I don't know if I'll share that with the listeners today. But certainly, as time progresses, I'll start to reveal a little bit more of where I'd like to see this place in the next 3 to 4 years.
Oh, I got to ask you how you're going to deal with the naysayers, because you're going to get this conversation if it hasn't already happened, and I'm guessing it may already have. But you're going to hear this. Brent, you're not working in the House of Commons now. Okay, I know they do things that way there, but around here we do things like this. So in some cases they could be having a legitimate point to make. So you have to kind of take it at face value and think about it at least. But in a lot of ways, it could be just sour grapes and a little self-esteem issue. How do you deal with all of that?
Well, I think for me, it's always been, listen, there are two sides to every story, every situation. People do have a right to be concerned with how much money maybe we're spending or not making at this point in time. But at the same time, my discipline and my training over my career, I spent 16 years on the Hill and almost 4 years as a consultant myself. We're trained that no isn't good enough. We find ways to get around obstacles. We're problem solvers. That's what political staffers do, And so when we see the naysayer or the negative look at things, we appreciate where it's coming from, but we don't subscribe to that type of thinking. So that's basically how we're going to focus on the future. Is we're going to move forward. Yes, they will be heard and it will be considered. I mean, it's all constructive criticism. And if you're too thin-skinned, you're not going to survive in a job like this. So I welcome the naysayers. They have a right to have their opinions voiced, but at the same time, with a little bit of leadership, maybe we can convince them to come over to the positive side.
Yeah, I think mostly people just want to be heard and want to know that they were acknowledged in most cases,
Yeah.
You're listening to Downhome Corner. Downhomers, we are all connected. Please like our Facebook page and share this episode. And listen anytime and for free anytime you like at downhomecorner.com. Now, back to our chat with Brent Babcock. Well, Brent, one of the legacies of Downhome, of course, is the wonderful gift of storytelling. And you said our region has a story, and I'd say yes, we have many stories for sure. And, when you think of it, storytelling is a part of the legacy of Downhome. I mean, when we were kids, for instance, we may have heard people coming back from Ontario, and who were Downhomers and sharing what life was like back then. Generations before that, it would have been stories of Ireland or England or Scotland or the old country, Right. So storytelling is I would say a legacy and an art form of Downhome, So,
very much so.
Yeah. So in the spirit of that, how about we tell some stories? You want to do that?
Sure. Let's go for it.
Okay, now you got a great story about when you first arrived in Ottawa and you took a job with Joe Clark.
Yep.
And the first day on the job, not exactly a run-of-the-mill day for most of us, a little surreal, something about a drive and a phone call. Tell us about that.
Sure thing. It was my first day with him. Of course, I'd met him through his comeback campaign to be leader. But as a volunteer, you don't really have that much interaction. So he still is a bit of an unknown, to me. And at the same time, you had to respect. Sure, there's a lot of people who laugh, say Joe Who and all the old jokes and stuff like that. But you have to respect the fact that he was, for a time, the Prime Minister of the country and carries the title and so forth. So there was a bit of a mystique about him. So anyway, that day, the first day, it was in March, and we were getting one of those out like a lion kind of storms. And without exaggeration, there had to be, Steve, there had to be at least a good 9 to 10 inches of snow on the ground. And the car arrives, the person from the party hands me the keys, and they said, Mr. Clark's in the back. And I'm just shaking like a leaf because this is like, a snowstorm in a city of 1 million people is not a pretty sight. Around here, we can handle it, but down there. So I was like, oh boy, this is going to be new. So I get in the car and he says hello, and we say hello, little pleasantries. And he said, I want you to take me to Brian Mulroney's house in Montreal. And I'm like, you're kidding me. I thought perhaps he's going to say, let's go to the airport or drop me at home or something to that effect. And I was like, okay, Montreal it is. And I'm thinking, my goodness, how we're going to stay on the road. And we start off, we leave Ottawa, and I'm getting myself calmed down. We're doing okay. The roads and the highway were plowed pretty good. So the drive was getting easy, actually. So I was relaxed, and he said, and I'll do a terrible impression of him, and God forbid he ever hears this, because he knows I do a terrible impression of him. But that said, he goes, oh, Brent, can you get Rosalind on the phone for me? Now, Rosalind is his personal secretary that he's had since he began in politics. They've came up from 77 onward together. So she gets on. Back then, Steve, the phones in the car were cordless. There was a corded phone. It was like the old style, like you punch the dial numbers on the outside. So I'm dialing the headquarters phone number. She comes on the phone, and I pass him back to him, and he says, Rosalind, could you get George Bush on the phone for me? And at that, now, we're not talking George Jr., we're talking George Sr., and I'm like, did I just hear him say he wants to talk to George Bush? This is crazy. So sure enough, I'd say, Steve, 10 minutes later, the car phone rings, and I don't know what the greeting is. This is day one, and I'm going, I pick it up, and I go, Leader's car, and he goes, hi. He goes, is this Brent? And I went, yes. He goes, George Bush here, Brent. And I was like, hi, Mr. President. How you doing? And he goes, fine. He goes, I'm looking for Joe. And I was like, fine. So I passed him back.
You didn't say Joe who, did you?
No.
Okay.
That was the opportunity to get fired right there.
I know. I would have debated, yeah.
Yeah, but so I passed them on, and they had a chat, and I won't get into the details, but it was a pretty interesting chat because at this time Canada had been involved in a bombing mission with our CF-18s in Kosovo. So it was the subject matter was quite interesting, hearing from their perspective what might take place in the coming months and so forth. And what the implications would be for Canada being involved no longer in escort missions, but actually in actual bombing missions. So it was quite interesting. Anyway, that said, he then said, okay, I'll do that, George. And then he hangs up the phone and he says, Brent, can you give me Rosalind again? So I call Rosalind, but he calls her Rosalind. And he says, get me Brent Scrowcroft. Now, Brent Scrowcroft, if you check back in your American history in the administration of the Bush, he was head of the National Security Agency, NSA, and a big deal. And, of course, the same thing. I get a phone call, and this guy goes, hi, can I speak to Brent, please? And I'm saying, Brent speaking. And he goes, hi, Brent, it's Brent. And he's like, and he goes, I'm looking for Mr. Clark. And I was like, so within an hour, I hit the Quebec border, and it hit me right between the eyes. Like, I am working in the big leagues here. Like, this is pretty interesting. And I'll just finish the story by saying a year and a half later, Brian Mulroney's daughter, Caroline, was married. And I took the Clarks to that wedding in Montreal. And of course, the Bushes were guests. And after the funeral, or after the wedding ceremony, Joe and brought me over to meet Barbara and George in person.
Wow.
And George said out loud, and I couldn't believe it, he said, I think we've met before by telephone.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of a cool thing. And those people, you look at them, they have that, they're, how would you say, they've done some pretty big things, but one of their crafts is their memories. And they remember events and things. And so I couldn't believe that he was able to put that part together. And I was pretty impressed. But anyway, yeah, so I actually got to meet him in the flesh just, a little bit down the road from that particular day. So that's my first day with Joe Clark story.
Wow. What I love about being at that level, whether it's politics or celebrity of any kind, I always assumed that the majority would be arrogant or standoffish. And I've found when you get to that level, there doesn't seem to be a lot of that. They just seem to be all co-workers and, let's do it this way. You don't want to do it? Okay,
Absolutely. Especially George and Barbara Bush, they could easily be Downhomers. But at the same time, you're looking at a man who ran the CIA, a man who, became vice president of the United States under Ronald Reagan, a guy who went on to be president of the United States. And it's just like, wow. And I'm looking at a real former CIA spook right in front of me there. And at the same time, the generous, friendly, personality. You wouldn't feel awkward about meeting him in Campbellton, New Brunswick either. He'd fit right in. But I will say, Steve, while you mention that, there is a distinct difference when you go over to Europe. The Europeans are different people altogether. They are arrogant and rude. So they look at Canadians a little differently.
They wouldn't treat the Kennedys in the same fashion, I guess.
No.
Well, you spoke about the military. Let's get to another story. 2006. It's the last week before Christmas. A lot of Downhomers might have been preparing for the holidays. Some might be preparing for a trip. Hey, I'm going to go back home for the holidays. Or maybe you're a Downhomer going to visit family elsewhere.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of stress that it's going along with planning a trip, no matter how much you're looking forward to it. Now, December 21st, 2006, a few days before Christmas, you got word that you were going to take a trip, and it had a little more stress involved, right?
It certainly did. I got notified to go down to a particular floor inside the defense minister's offices in National Defense Headquarters in Ottawa to donate, or not donate, but to retrieve 2 pints of my blood. And I did 1 pint on one day, and then 2 days later I did another. And then I was like, well, why am I doing this? Where am I going? And of course they give you
Transylvania. You're going to Transylvania.
Yeah. Am I going to a convention of vampires? So then they give you your mission. So basically the minister had me up in his office and he said, look, I've got a situation where I'm not comfortable with this parliamentary secretary going to Kandahar, and I want you to escort him. You're in charge of the trip. And I was like, whoa. I'm going to Kandahar, and it's like, yeah. So
Afghanistan or Ontario, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So Afghanistan, I'm going, and we're leaving on New Year's Day, 2007. So I was like, wow, this really changes my Christmas plans.
Happy holidays! Wow.
Hey, Mom, I'm not going to be there, but yeah, it was quite a shock, and at the same time, quite a thrill. The imagination starts to run, because at that time, we were heavily into that mission. Many Canadians had lost their lives at that point, so it was a serious thing. It wasn't just some sort of tour at the local army base or anything like that. This was the real deal. So I had to prepare for that, and we had to go to special briefings through the Christmas break because there was different issues that we had to consider or be aware of in the event of our travel. And of course, I had top secret designation. So I was given a different briefing than my parliamentary secretary, who had no clearance.
Wow.
So sometimes he had to come to me, and it was awkward because he's an elected official and I'm just a public office holder at that point. But it was interesting. I don't know if you want to get into too much of it, but I'll certainly answer any questions you have about Kandahar. But yeah, it was I would say almost a life-changing experience. The 5 days in theater that I spent there. So.
Oh, the humbleness of it all must have been just enormous.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was some of the takeaways you get is like seeing 22-year-old Canadians, men and women, 3,200 strong. With a can-do, no fear spirit. And, you're sitting there going, because every night the base is attacked in some fashion, whether it's machine gun fire, TNT dynamite on a donkey, or whether it's rockets that they find, from the Russian days and they launch them. But there's some sort of night activity. So it's not a quiet place. It's not something from the movies. It is a stressful place. And I couldn't believe that, in this day and age, that we would be afforded the opportunity to sit inside a theater of war, right in it. So yeah, when you have to go to bed with your flak jacket on,
wow. So
that type of thing, it's like.
So you were right in the middle of it, right? I mean, it was not just a base away from, 3 miles from here is the front. You were right, there was fire going back and forth.
Yeah,
Wow.
my trailer was very close to one of the watchtowers. And any given evening, you could go out there and you'll see tracer fire going out of the machine gun nests, and they're not target practice. That's just people who have not taken the warnings and all that type of thing. And it's the real deal. So I remember saying to the general when we arrived, the tail of a Hercules drops down, as you've seen in movies many times. Vehicles drive off of them or what have you. So I'm walking down the ramp, and I have my flak jacket on and a helmet, and and I know the general because for 2 months he was getting briefings in our office before he took command, so very familiar to me. So I said, General Grant, I said, do you mind if I take my helmet off? It's boiling, like it was just really, really hot that day. And he said, well, Brent, let's step around the plane here because we had sniper fire this morning.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, sure you did, and he's not laughing. Like, he's guiding me to a safer place to take my helmet off so I can stop sweating. And then I see two guys in a ghillie suit, which is the sniper grass. It's that shaggy-looking piece. And I see them climbing into a Black Hawk, and they're Canadian. And they're getting to an American Black Hawk helicopter, and they're, the big long rifle bag is there with them. And I said, where are they off to? And he looked over his shoulder at them. He looked back at me, and it really, really blew me away. He said, well, Brent, I suspect they're going to kill someone. And you realize this is not Gagetown. Like, we are, we are in the middle of it. And it was really, really shocking. Almost shocking in the sense that until you feel it, see it, smell it, you really don't know what it's like. The movies don't tell you the whole story.
I know.
You can talk macho all you want to talk macho.
Real doesn't feel real sometimes, like it feels like this is not like the movies. It's not right,
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
it's
and
weird.
And as I say, you can talk macho and be a tough guy, but you'll change your tune when you see it done for real. And yeah, absolutely. So it really, really blew me away what I saw over there.
Like John Dunsworth talked about taking trips to Afghanistan, and he said that he met soldiers, and he wasn't sure how they'd take him. And he told us, he mentioned this in one of our podcasts on Downhome Corner, and he said, I met a soldier time and time again would say, at nighttime, I'd have to watch, an episode of Trailer Park Boys, and that took me back home, and I felt safe, So it just, it's hard to imagine, if you're not there, how extraordinary, enormous it is,
Sure, and I truly didn't understand the definition of the term professional soldier until I really got there. And I remember every night we had to sit in the mess tent with Canadian soldiers. And so one night I was sitting with a bunch of the younger guys, and they were the security escort for these ridiculous supply convoys that we did. Because we didn't have airlift, we didn't have helicopters, we had to drive everything up to our forward operating bases. And of course, this is where you would hear about IED strikes and this type of thing. So I said to them, I said, they told me what it was like. They had been in many hits or in contact with the enemy. So they experienced what this was like, and that was interesting. And then I said, how do you get back in the vehicle the next day and do it? And he says, well, we do it for each other. And I still didn't quite understand, how you could will yourself to get back in a vehicle that got lifted 4 feet off the ground from a detonation from the vehicle next to it, and everybody died. And how do you get there, mentally? And then he said to me, he said, look, sir. He said, basically it's like this. He said, police go to doors in the middle of the night, domestic abuse. They don't know what's behind the door. Firemen run into houses to save people that they don't know and risk their life. And he goes, and I kill bad people. So don't cry for me if I come home in a box. I did what I want to do. And it's like, okay. Sort of a harsh definition, but really, truly, these guys love what they're doing, but you look at it and go, my goodness, how do you do it? There'd be a breaking point for me.
No team spirit. No team spirit like those teams, let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was fascinating to sort of see how that really, really works on the ground and not just on a movie screen.
From Campbellton to California, Salisbury to Sweden, this is Downhome Corner. Downhomers, we are all connected. Connect with all episodes, past and present, at downhomecorner.com. Now, back to our show with Brent Babcock.
Hey, speaking of tough guys, you met Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, I did. There's a great story there. He was on a tour after he was done governor and before his personal life blew up. In between there, he was on a speaking tour, and it was interesting. They'd asked Peter MacKay, to be the orator or the host, I guess, for a dinner. And basically, what 1,000 and 1,200 people did in Winnipeg is they paid $1,000 each to come and have dinner with Arnold. And so Arnold comes on stage and he does a speech, and then he sits down at a table, and then after he gets up on stage again with Peter, and they sit in a chair and they do a little bit of what you and I are doing. So it sounded like a nice format, and so at that time Peter said, well, Brent, I want you to come with me on this one. So I said, fine, this is great, get to meet Arnold. So there's a rope line, and I guess the best part of the trip, or the best part of the story, and if you're friends with me on Facebook, you'll see my picture with Arnold. But but basically, there's a rope line, and you don't have any time to talk to him. It's just shake hands, look, snap the photo, and then they give you a business card, which you then contact for your photo. So anyway, as I'm walking up to him, and Peter's not far away. He's just off to the side. I said, Arnold, I've lost 100 pounds. And I was just trying to say something as I approached him.
Yeah.
And out loud with his big accent, he said, keep going. And we, to this day, Peter and I, we laughed all the way home. We weren't sure if he was like saying, my God, you've got a long way to go. Or was he being encouraging and saying, that's the spirit, don't give up, because it was like, keep going. We weren't sure if he was disgusted or surprised. So we had a good laugh over Arnold's accent. But,
he'd slipped into character, so it was hard to tell what he was really. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't sure how to take it, right? But he's quite a fascinating guy, and his speech that he gave, and of course I got to spend some private time with him before this in the back, and very, very interesting character, and you can see a guy's guy. You can tell this is a guy that grew up in a gym. He's gregarious, storytelling, backslapping, that type of thing. He's not sedate or quiet in any kind of fashion. He's an instigator.
He's a guy.
Oh yeah, guy all the way. So.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't know that haven't seen him in interviews or that kind of thing, he's a super intelligent guy. He's really on the ball.
Scary. And he was at 19. He was a millionaire. Wow. And he was from bricklaying. His father was a brick master or a brick layer mason. And there was an earthquake, I think in Turkey, and he took 4 of his friends and they went and opened up a business and got all the government contracts to rebuild these government buildings. And at 19 or 20, he was a millionaire. And that's the money he used to come to Montreal. And he met Joe Waiter. And Joe Waiter said, come back next year to New York to my studio. I'm going to turn you into the best bodybuilder in the world. And that's how it happened. He tells the story, So he was well on his way to financial freedom at a young age, and fell into the bodybuilding and then fell into acting afterwards. And rather fascinating story that he tells. But very intelligent guy. This guy is no dummy at all.
And he really earned his way too. Like he really worked there. Yeah. Well, you also met 2 heroes of mine. Somebody who's a hero, I guess, to history, Nelson Mandela. Yeah.
Do you want to hear about that one too?
No, he doesn't sound interested. Yeah, please tell us, Brent, please.
Sure. Well, in my early days, he was coming to speak for the first time after his release to the to Canada, to address Parliament as a way of saying thank you for the significant effort that Canada had in releasing him during the Brian Mulroney, Joe Clark government back in the 80s. So it was kind of interesting. So I begged every way I could, and I was given a seat in the press gallery to witness this speech. And lo and behold, Prime Minister Chrétien brings him out, and there he is, and I'm in the balcony, but it's a small. If you've been in the House of Commons, it's a small chamber, so very intimate, very close. And I'm going, my goodness, look at that! It's Nelson Mandela. I can't believe, the goosebumps. You're like, wow, he's right here, And he gave the most moving speech that I've ever heard, because it was all about tolerance, peace, and understanding, and how he didn't hate his captors.
Amazing guy.
He didn't spend his time in captivity or imprisonment in a hateful manner. And you're just going, how could you not? How could you not want to just like kill everybody once you got out and once you became president of South Africa? How did you not want to have vengeance?
Yeah.
He was just amazing how he explained that that's just going backwards. It's not going forwards. And what an enlightening individual. So after that was over, there's always a reception, and I knew where the reception was taking place. But as it goes, the spoils of politics. That room is really for liberals and liberal staffers. They're the government of the day. So, but I sort of hung out in the hall and kind of kept wedging myself along. And next thing you know, I'm at a choke point right at the door. And as he's walking, he sees my lapel pin, which is PC. For that time, it was the Progressive Conservative Party. And he goes, PC, PC. And he goes, Joe Clark. And then he shakes my hand, and Kretsch's standing there looking at me, and he shakes my hand, and of course, they hurdle him into the room, but there was no opportunity to talk. But I actually got to shake his hand, and I was like, wow, what a job I've got.
What always gets me when I meet someone like that, so a great person like that, is which you don't get to see on television, is when you get to look in their eyes. You get a split second of the power. Just it's hard to explain, but you get what I'm saying, though.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's that. I've met a lot of other celebrities through this job because they visit Parliament and stuff, and that's so true. That it's that like you say, that second or that millisecond. It's like time freezes, and you kind of look at each other, and it's like, I will remember this now the rest of my life. Like it's imprinted, like it's never going to be erased from my mind. So, yeah, for sure. That was one of the more amazing days.
Well, the other hero of mine you met is this guy from Dublin named Paul Hewson.
You mean Bono?
Bono, yeah, Bono. You met Bono? Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. It was really funny. I was in my office, and I'd made so many friends on the other side that one of my liberal friends called me and said, dude, Bono's down on the 3rd floor in Confed, and I'm in the 8th floor of Confed. He goes, you got to come down now. So down I go, and sure enough, he comes out of this meeting room with Ralph Goodale and the Minister of Finance of the day. And, of course, he was looking for more money from Canada to contribute to AIDS in Africa and whatnot. So he had a publicist with him, a young girl, a company in Ottawa that had been hired to bring him to the Hill and do this. And so she really didn't know what she was doing, and it was a bit disorganized. So as he came out, there was a bunch of us staffers, and I think there's a photo or two on my Facebook page where, I'm in the crowd. It wasn't one of those today's aggressive selfie things where, I got to get a picture with me and Bono. I was just happy to be in the crowd kind of thing. But we're there. And then after he got on the elevator, and my friend and I said, let's go downstairs and we'll see him again in the lobby. So we ran down the stairs and we went outside, and his van that was coming to get him was caught in traffic. So there's this girl that's working the cell phone trying to find another way. And here's Bono, just with myself and Greg. And we peppered him with so many questions because we wanted to know every possible thing that we could take from him. And what a great guy. He was so cooperative. Like he didn't feel like bothered or apprehensive of our excitement to talk. He was right there with us, and he was just amazing. And we went all over the place from the current tour to what it was like to be at Live Aid and doing all these other different things that that they had set the bar for in music. And at that time they were I guess we'll put this back at about 2003, 2004. So they were big. And they'd already established themselves. And that was the band that, Steve, I first, and you can share this too with the listeners, but that was like my first year of university was 83, and Sunday Bloody Sunday, that album was the big rage. That was my band from, when I left Campbellton to the big city. I was a U2 guy.
Oh, yeah.
And here I was actually getting to chit-chat, so he reached in his jacket to give us concert tickets and realized that he had dumped them all on a table. And so we didn't get any tickets, sadly, to the show. So.
It's almost a better story,
Yeah, it kind of sucked, but the good intentions was there. So that said, he really enjoyed his chat with us.
That's sweet of him. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
I'm with all the questions you asked, I don't know if he had a chance, but generally what I've seen and I've heard about him in interviews and in person is he's a curious sort. Did he ask you anything?
Yeah, absolutely, and that was so much fun about it. He asked us a lot about well, back then I felt I was young, but he asked us what the young people in politics, staffers, what is our understanding of world plight? Like what's going on outside of Canada? Do we really focus or care about it? And he wanted to just sort of get a grasp of, do we do any interaction with African embassies? That type of thing. So he was, you could tell that he had bought into his message or his movement, his movement, I guess, with medicine and better treatment for people in Africa.
Yeah.
So he was curious to see just exactly, how much thought we give to it when Bono's not around.
Oh, wow.
And because of course that few days that he was going to be in town, the hype was up, and of course everybody had their I Love Africa badge on, but what happens when he leaves town?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. He wanted to know from the nation's capital to the country's perspective, how do we see the situation in Africa? Do we see it at all on the news? That type of thing. So we were very frank with him about it, and he appreciated it.
Nice.
But it was very interesting.
See, one of the reasons he's a hero of mine. I've been into. I first really jumped on the bandwagon when Achtung Baby came out, and then I went backwards, and then I just wanted to hear everything I could by the band, and they walk the walk, and and Bono just doesn't sing about problems in the world. He actually goes out and tries to do something, and I love his line, "I can't change the world, but I know the people who can."
That's right.
That's a cool. Right. And this is the second 1 degree of separation for me and Bono now. You telling me this story, since I know you. I attended a U2 concert in 2011. I'm at the Rogers Center, and I got into the red zone, which is the ring around the stage. Right. Now, I just wanted to get a look at the band going by. Maybe if I was lucky, high five one of the members going by, right? Just,
Sure.
Me being a teenager in my 50s. So I'm having a conversation prior to the show with this guy who turns out worked for somebody in the golf industry who was originally from Campbellton. So, we got talking about, I thought, wow, isn't that cool? I met somebody, connected to Campbellton in one way here at a U2 concert. So anyway, he told me the guy's name and I can't remember. But anyway, not 45 minutes later, he's standing like 6 feet away from me. He and his kid, Ethan, this kid, all of a sudden, Bono's going by, he stops. I heard him say off mic, "the kid." And within 3 seconds, the roadies have got this kid. They picked him up and they put him on stage, and now he's walking hand in hand with Bono. And they talk about breaking the fifth wall, where you break that little imaginary barrier between you and the audience. Well, It was so great. I was so fascinated at watching this kid that I didn't realize that Bono was standing right in front of me. It was that amazing of a moment. And so this kid has gone off, and you can find this on YouTube. It's the song "The City of Blinding Lights" was the song. And I go, wow. So now you telling me this story is like, gee, I've come this close. I got to meet this guy someday. But hey, I'll take the stories of 1 degree separation. Had to be a thrill for you, though.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll just segue into another quick story here, but you'll appreciate, I think. And that was I got on a flight with Mr. Clark, and he had the window. I was not in business class, so I was at the first row of economy, and he was in the second last row of business class. So he was within earshot if I needed to ask him something or what have you. So keep an eye on him, that type of thing. And in comes Tom Jones, the Tom Jones, and he sits down next to Joe and takes a seat. And Joe doesn't really like socializing. I think he's been abused on airplanes somewhere in his life or something. So
Tom Jones is sitting next to me. Could you ask him to move, please?
So he holds the newspaper up very close to his face so that you can't really turn and talk to him. You'd be interrupting whoever that is. So he's cocooned in his globed mail, so to speak, and Tom Jones, having fun with the flight attendants, and orders a few drinks, and he's stirring the drink with his finger, and and all that kind of stuff, and having no problem. So we were from Calgary to Ottawa, so roughly 4.5-hour flight, and we land in Ottawa, and Tom Jones gets up, and I think just out of courtesy, everybody else in the first class stayed in their seats, and he was the first one off the plane. So off he goes, and Joe and I get our stuff, and we go down at the luggage area waiting, and there's Tom Jones with the promoter or whoever. He's come to Ottawa obviously for his tour, and Joe says to me, he goes, "Don't look right away, but I think Tom Jones is standing over there." And I said, "You were sitting beside him for 4.5 hours." He goes, "What?" It was a classic. What?
I love it. That's so cool.
You're listening to Downhome Corner. All our shows are available for free anytime at downhomecorner.com. Coming up, Leslie Ferguson and her song Hero's Lullaby. I'm your host, Steve Bujold, and now back to more great stories from Parliament Hill with Brent Babcock.
Well, Brent, the final story here I'd like to kind of touch on a bit, just because it was part of history and you were around that area at the time. Although you technically weren't on the Hill that day, I'm referring to the national tragedy, the 2014 murder of Corporal Nathan Cirillo. Mm-hmm. Now, being in the middle of history sometimes has its dark sides too, But what did it feel like to you in the days following on the Hill, and what was the mood like for you?
It was very distressing, and I'll go into this a little bit here. Take you back prior to that event. A colleague of mine, his name is Gray Shanahan. He and I often found ourselves trying to think of things that we could do while we were in office. In other words, we were working for the Minister of National Defense, and we were always trying to think of something we could do to put our little name on history, some little thing that we did. So we had done something with a wound stripe. We made it into a sacrifice medal. Yay. We were pretty proud we got that done. And then it hit us. I was watching a documentary one day. It was about Arlington, the National Cemetery in Washington, and the guard that is there for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So they have a vigil. Their weather allows them to do it 365, 24/7. So I thought, well, we should do something like that here in Canada. And Gray, being a reservist, thought that had a lot of merit. And so we went about our way of cultivating some sort of a progression of endorsement, from the Army, from the department, from the Prime Minister's office, and of course our minister, who was a retired general. And so we then pitched it, we put it together and so forth, and it got accepted. And after a lot of fighting and arguing within the city, who would be in control of this, it was established that the Governor General's Foot Guard and other regiments within Canada would share in the vigil of guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We were so proud. I mean, this was a feather in our caps, and we thought it was a tremendous thing. And up to that point, Steve, there were days, evenings, partying downtown. Young people would be photographed in the local Ottawa Citizen newspaper, urinating on the
I know,
that type of thing, right? So we had to do something to claim it back, because clearly we had lost control of it. And so to claim it back was to occupy it.
Yeah.
And so we thought this was the perfect way to do that. And so when this event for Corporal Cirillo occurred, I'm going to tell you, I was sickened to my stomach. Not that I felt directly, responsible, that I put him there.
We all felt sickened.
But I felt sickened because I felt I had a hand in the presence of soldiers there. And when we never thought of them being in danger, that was never part of the calculation of, we had to sort of have the cold room for them in the summer, a place to recuperate from hours in the heat. We had a change room for them, that type of thing. We had to find accommodation.
Yeah, you never considered a madman with a gun. Exactly.
Right,
no,
right.
Yeah.
So when it happened, and the way that it happened, and of course I had a lot of more accurate information than television, I was learning much quicker what had truly happened. And I tell you, Steve, it took me days to sort of get past the whole thing. And I don't want to sound melodramatic, but it's just that, when you feel some attachment to something like that, and this happens, it was a very deep blow. It was like, my goodness, someone's lost their life over something that was created out of goodness. It was never created to be aggressive or in nature or, that type of thing. It was never made to draw hate out of someone, and yet somebody with a lot of hate saw it as an opportunity. And it was just terrible.
The battle of the heart and the head, your head says, look, I know I'm not responsible, but your heart says, oh my God, look what I did. And it's not true, but it's, if you're a human with emotions, it's going to go through your mind,
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a very, very difficult time. And, and when I think back of it, even to this day, my heart, my stomach just sinks. It's like, my goodness, how could that have happened? But it did, and but we continue to do it today. It didn't stop the program. They've found other ways to do that with some more insurance that nobody's going to sneak up behind you and fire a rifle into your back. But at that time, we'd never ever considered that this would somehow attract that type of hate. But clearly it did. So it was a very unfortunate thing.
I just want to make mention of Kevin Vickers, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but, of course, the Sergeant-at-Arms, the man responsible, along with the RCMP, for taking down the murderer, and it was like a scene out of Starsky and Hutch, so dramatic. Now, Kevin Vickers, I just want to point out, a Downhomer. Born in Chatham, raised in Newcastle, and back then, before it was called Miramichi too. Mother was a nurse. Father operated Northumberland Co-op Dairy. Family took in students from developing countries who were attending St. Francis Xavier University. Just a true role model, Now, Brent, Kevin Vickers. What was he like before and after this event?
Sure. Getting to meet him when he was Sergeant-at-Arms, so that was his title. Sergeant-at-Arms, we always look at them today, they're very ceremonial. They will, if the speaker feels someone should be excused from the chamber, the Sergeant-at-Arms will be asked to remove the member. They wear a bit of a colonial uniform, but, back in the old days, these guys were a lot tougher, a lot rougher, and they were there to protect the speaker himself from any kind of attack from parliamentarians. That said, he's a big guy. He's like a 6'2", 6'3". He's not tiny by any stretch, so he fit the bill real well. And it was really fun to know that a New Brunswicker was sitting in that chair and that type of thing. And when he would have receptions, or the speaker would have receptions, the Sergeant-at-Arms was always present. And just a great guy, great conversation, friendly, outgoing, that type of thing. And but at the same time, you could tell that this guy, I think he was, if not mistaken, a former police officer. But, he had that kind of, straight kind of look to him that if you got on the wrong side of him, you may not want to find out what that looks like. He just had that look.
Don't mess with a Miramichier, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone remembers or recalls, but when he did discharge his weapon and he emptied his rounds, they were not sure this guy was a lone actor. They thought there's a possibility there's more of these guys that came on the grounds. And believe it or not, he got up, walked back to his office around the corner to get more ammunition. Like, he was not done. And that just showed you, like, he was, not wavering in any fashion. There was more than enough RCMP and security guards on the scene, but Kevin wasn't out of the fight yet. He had business to do, and that's just sort of testament to the guy. He was a cool hand Luke. Like, everybody else was pumped with adrenaline and trembling and, that type of thing. And this guy was going back for more ammo. So we always thought, my goodness, this was our Dirty Harry and we didn't know it, kind of thing. But certainly now when I had an opportunity to meet him after this, well after this event, but I find he's a changed person. And, that gleam in his eye just doesn't seem to be there. Now, I don't want to over-sensationalize it, but I'll just say that it just seems that, clearly that took a toll on him too in a far, far deeper deeper fashion than we might imagine. So
Yeah.
So I also had a friend, a very close friend, Steve, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but he was in the communications department in the minister's office, and he assisted assisted Corporal Cirillo at the time of the shooting. He was walking by. So of the 5 people that assisted, my friend Martin Maganin, he was also there to try and stop the bleeding and waiting for the EMTs to arrive. So he too has gone through a tremendous amount of change as a result of that kind of trauma. So it was a big day, and it did touch a lot of people firsthand, so to speak. So
yeah. I mean, everybody around it was changed in some way, and the RCMP officers as well, and
I often feel bad because the day earlier in Quebec, a Canadian Forces member was driven over twice by a car with the same kind of intent to hurt. And it was bizarre 48 hours in Ottawa.
Bad week.
Those 2 events, just really reached out and made us realize that the wars and those type of things are not over there anymore. They do find their way back home, and it's really sad.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about Kevin Vickers, though, because it's funny, after the incident, in the days that followed, he was, of course, known throughout this country and internationally, I mean, around the world, and people were celebrating his deeds, and I guess rightly so. I mean, it's understandable, but I through that all, I kept thinking about him. I'm thinking, what was he going through? How did he feel? How does that throw you off your axis in your life? I mean, that changes you. And not only that, but I mean, regardless of why it was done, there would be a certain guilt factor that would probably, be there too, and a whole bunch of emotions. So my heart, really went out to Kevin Vickers. Somebody reached out to me and asked, a couple of fans of the show and people that I respect very much too, asked me to. They say, why don't you get Kevin Vickers on the show? And well, first of all, they don't just line up to come here. I have to call them and, and convince them. And then secondly, I wouldn't contact him out of respect. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if he ever wanted a stage to tell his story, I would bust down barriers to make that happen for him, and certainly give him that forum, however big or small it is. But
I think he's still in Ireland, so you'll have to have a pretty good phone plan, because that'd be a nasty phone call. But yeah,
well, there you go. And not only that, but we'll get him to maybe get that guy from Dublin to get on the phone for a while too.
Yep, yeah, his friend Bono. Sure.
Kevin Vickers is ambassador to Ireland now, right?
That's correct.
We are Downhomers, and we are all connected. And this is Downhome Corner. Check out all our episodes and listen as often as you like for free at downhomecorner.com. Later in the show, songwriter and singer from Campbellton, Leslie Ferguson. Now, back to our conversation with Brent Babcock. We're sharing stories about celebrities.
Well, Brent, just to wrap up, after 10 years or 14 years or whichever working on Parliament Hill, what are you most proud of?
Well, that's, my goodness, Steve, it's so hard to pick out one particular thing, but I think it still hangs, I have it hanging on my wall at home. It was something that rarely happens in Parliament, and I was lucky enough to take part in something. It's called we have a moniker for it up there, but it's called the 1, 2, 3. There was no debate. In other words, first reading, second reading, and third reading, and basically we had been faced with this situation where we had Allied veterans who fought for the Allied side, but moved to Canada after the war, and their home countries then stopped paying them veterans benefits. So Canada decided that we would pick that up for them. So this was a very noble thing. And at the time, with Michael Ignatieff in Parliament and Stephen Harper, the temperature was pretty hot. Jack Layton, nobody really wanted to help anybody because we were in a minority government and everyone was looking for an edge. And so therefore, it was kind of a tough thing. Now, my minister asked me to go out and get this bill passed without debate. So I had to use my friends in Ignatieff's office, my friends in Jack Layton's office, and my friends in the bloc to believe me that we weren't going to pull a Harper stunt and then get them to do this and then run out and take all the credit for it. So we had to really put that olive branch out and sort of rise above partisanship. And I remember our party whip said, "It'll never happen. Impossible, but go have fun." Well, we got it done, and we got it done in the Senate as well. And so that rarely happens in Parliament, where parliamentarians just accept the bill as read and no debates, no committee, put into law. And so they gave it to me with the wax seal and the glass frame as a memento. Not the original copy, but a copy of, so a reasonable facsimile of what it would really look like, the actual piece of approved legislation. So that was sort of a culmination of my time, my 16 years. It was a recognition of the friendships that I made, the integrity that I had with others, that, Brent wouldn't take us down this road and play a game with us. He's a straight up shooter. So I kind of look at that as my benchmark, and in all of my experiences. I mean, I had so many, and Steve, I could take hours here storytelling with you, but that type of thing. But that's probably what resonates the most as far as what did I accomplish or get done. It's my little very micro, tiny piece of history, footnote in history. But yeah, it was fun to do things like that, and I think that was complete use of every skill and piece of noble work that I'd attained, on Parliament Hill, to bring that all together. So yeah, very proud of that.
Well, you proved that politics, you can do the amazing and the incredible and unbiased as well. So there you go.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Brent, no matter what it paid, in many ways, serving our country is a thankless job. So as a Canadian and a Downhomer, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. You're very welcome. I appreciate it. But it was a tremendous opportunity, and I'm forever grateful that I had the privilege to do it. So.
Yeah. And also, too, I want to thank you. I've tried a couple of your slow cooker recipes on Facebook that you've shared, and they've been pretty good. So thank you, too.
Trying to help everybody find the right dish. But, that's... They're not too bad, some of those.
Well, food is part of down-home culture, too, You
bet. And if you're in town, or if anybody that's listening is in town this summer, we have a tremendous, I'm doing a selfless plug here, tremendous gastronomy experience waiting for you here at the Taste the Place restaurant inside of the Restigouche River Experience Center. So please stop by.
Yes, and good luck with the RREC too. I hope it just expands into some bigger and better things for the area. I hope it is the start of something that generations from now we'll be talking about.
Yeah, hear, hear.
Thanks for joining us in Downhome Corner, Brent.
You're welcome anytime, and hello to everybody that's out there.
With every show, with every interview, with every song, we bring more and more Maritimers home. This is Downhome Corner. Leslie Ferguson is a singer-songwriter from Campbellton, New Brunswick. Many from back home know Leslie's music and performances for years, and now people follow Leslie worldwide through the magic of YouTube, ReverbNation.com, and on Facebook, for example. She now lives in Ottawa, where she also worked as an analyst for the RCMP for 10 years before retiring in 2015. Not long ago, Leslie went into Fat Dog Studios in Ottawa and worked with producer Chad Nasrallah to create a beautiful song called Hero's Lullaby. It's a heartfelt tribute to first-line responders and other professionals who carry their share of burdens, and often a very heavy load. Now, while the song may have spiritual overtones, the process of creating it was evolution. All right, joining us on Downhome Corner, Leslie Ferguson. Welcome to Downhome Corner, Leslie.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Now, your song, Hero's Lullaby, is a pretty cool tune. You went through a lot to get it recorded at Fat Dog Studios with Chad Nasrallah. Great guy to work with, too, isn't he?
Oh, he's wonderful. He really takes what you have in your head and helps translate that into music.
Now, I've often heard if you're lucky enough to write a great song, it can evolve something like this. You go into a studio with the idea, you might have the lyrics, you might have a melody or a chorus, that kind of thing, and you begin to tell the song what to do, what to sound like. But if you really get something going with this, then the song kind of starts to tell you what to do and you follow it, and that's oftentimes the formula to writing a great song. Was this song kind of like that process?
Well, Hero's Lullaby actually started out as Andrea's Lullaby. That was the actual first title of the song, and the reason for that was it was actually written for my daughter Andrea, because originally she was the first hero of the song, in that she had gone through a lot in her very short life. When I first wrote the song, she was around 12 years old, and she had been through the ringer from an undiagnosed condition, which now we know is juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. And I'd seen her suffer through so many dark times in that she was having non-clinical seizures, which ended up manifesting themselves in grand mal seizures. And so she'd gone through this entire process with all these doctors' appointments and these terrible situations she was in, and then having these grand mal seizures at school. Like at one point she was having up to, I'd say, probably 6 a month. And it was a very, very difficult time for her and for myself as well. And so when I started the song, the lyrics go, "Hey, you, I know you're feeling lost and forsaken, and you don't think anyone can understand your pain." And so it goes on like that. The song just kind of wrote itself. And then later on, as the song evolved, I just realized that she was a hero. And so it became Hero's Lullaby. And then I realized that the song could be identified, like other people could identify with the song because of mental health issues, or in my case, PTSD. And I realized that it could reach a greater audience than my one true hero, which is my daughter. And I realized that sometimes the first responders, 911 operators, police officers, soldiers, need the second responders, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the psychiatrists, psychologists, occupational therapists. And so when you get to the chorus where it says, there's angels on your shoulders, that can be real angels if you're a spiritual person, or they can be the second responders. Even though you feel that they've passed you by, they're really right there in human form.
It's almost as if as your daughter grew up, the song grew up too, you know?
Well, exactly. It took 10 years to become the song it is now. She's, well, actually, I say 10, it's 12. She's 24 years old now, and she has a son of her own. And she's really, really overcome these obstacles. And she had angels on her shoulder the whole way. And so I believe that the song really is a testament to how you have to hold on.
And it's good because even as the song evolves, she can still feel that's personal. Like, like the song can still be all personal to her, but yet to the rest of the world as well. So it's nice that she doesn't lose out on that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, she actually liked when I changed the chorus from Andrea's Lullaby to Hero's Lullaby, because she felt more like a hero, and she felt more personalized by it.
Your pain, and no matter how
Leslie Ferguson and Hero's Lullaby. And that's our show. Our thanks to this episode's guests, Brent Babcock, a former resident of Ottawa, now living in Campbellton, and singer-songwriter Leslie Ferguson, a former resident of Campbellton, now living in Ottawa. Downhome Corner is produced by superhero Mike Cicada from his secret lair in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and me, Steve Bujold, from my humble abode in Aylmer, Quebec. Downhomers, thank you so much for listening. Please, once again, share this episode on social media and like our page on Facebook if you haven't already. All of your support helps us reach more and more Downhomers around the world with each and every show. If you're a business with a product or service you think Downhomers can use, then why not consider being a sponsor on one of our shows? Our show reaches Downhomers around the world. Private message me on our Facebook page and I'll get back to you. Check out all our shows, the latest and past podcasts too, at downhomecorner.com. Till next time, I'm Steve Bujold reminding you, if you're a Downhomer, we are all connected.